feature on baseball. We have a great baseball forum for you. Our panel consists of a number of distinguished baseball experts who will be discussing the national pastime. This is doubly exciting tonight because we are in the midst of the Fall Classic, the World Series. I'm sure most of you saw or heard the results of last night's game between the Rangers and the Cardinals, which the Cardinals won in the 11th inning. And tonight, of course, we have the 7th, the deciding game of that series. And what a great way to warm up to that game with this baseball forum with all these experts that we have with us. Moderating our program tonight is Bob Rich. Bob is a businessman and also owns the Buffalo Bisons, which is a minor league baseball team. Joining him on the panel will be Curt Smith, a noted sports writer. Also Milo Hamilton, the voice of the Houston Astros, and Wally Moon, former major leaguer who lives here in town. So welcome to all our panelists. Our panelists will be able to take questions at the end of their presentations. Those of you who would like to pose questions to our panelists can do so by using the microphones that are pre-positioned to the front of the auditorium. Following our program tonight, ladies and gentlemen, I invite you to join us for a reception in the lobby. And during the reception, there will be a book signing by our panelists, so you can do some of your Christmas shopping very early this year. They have some wonderful books that they'll be able to autograph for all of you. Our event tonight is being live streamed, and so a special welcome to our viewers that are watching us on the internet. Before we begin our panel discussion, we have a very brief film on minor league baseball. As you know, minor league baseball is a big attraction in the United States. What we thought we'd do is to kind of set the mood with a little montage of minor league baseball throughout the U.S. Very good. You saw some exciting plays, and you also saw some mascots there, and I'm pleased to say that we have our very own Brazos Valley Bombers Collegiate League mascot, Kaboom. Where is Kaboom? There he or she is. There's Kaboom. Okay, it's my pleasure now to introduce Bob Rich. Mr. Rich is chairman of Rich Products Corporation, the largest family-owned frozen foods manufacturer in the United States. His high business ethics and customer service standards have earned Mr. Rich the distinction as one of the nation's most dynamic business leaders. Bob earned his bachelor's degree in 1963 from Williams College, and he earned his MBA with honors from the University of Rochester. He was named president of Rich's in 1978 and chairman in 2006. Today, he is active on many corporate boards and organizations, including the Cleveland Clinic Foundation and the International Game Fish Association. Mr. Rich serves as president and CEO of the Buffalo Bisons, a AAA minor league team for the New York Mets. Bob is an all-around sportsman, including fly fishing, tennis, and polo, among other sports. After college, he played professional hockey for the Buffalo Bisons of the American Hockey League. Mr. Rich is an avid fisherman and is the author of The Fishing Club, Brothers and Sisters of the Angle. Bob is also the author of Fish Fights and Secrets from the Delphi Cafe. His latest book is The Right Angle, which details moments in Buffalo sports history, such as the birth of the Buffalo Sabres hockey team
and how the movie The Natural came to be shot in Buffalo. He's joined this evening by his lovely wife, Mindy. Mindy, we're glad to have you here with us also. I would like to point out that Bob and Mindy are big supporters of the Bush Library Center, and I'd like to thank them for all their support over the years. Bob and Mindy are also very close friends of President and Mrs. Bush. Bob and President Bush are avid partners in fishing together. President Bush wanted to be here tonight, but because of family commitments could not make it. But Bob, he wanted to make sure that I passed on his hellos and his love for you and Mindy. So without further ado, I'd like to call upon Bob Rich.
Thank you very much, Roman. Howdy.
Howdy.
Hear now the words of former baseball commissioner Bart Giamatti about the game that he loved so dearly, baseball. It breaks your heart. It was designed to break your heart. The game begins in the spring when everything else begins again, and it blossoms in the summer, filling the afternoon and evenings, and then as soon as the chill rains come, it stops and leaves you to face the fall alone. And so we gather on this beautiful autumn day on campus where the Aggies are getting ready to kick Missouri's butts. Couldn't hear you? That's better, thank you. In this beautiful hall, which for just 1 hour tonight, we're going to turn into the Church of Baseball. And to help us with our services, we have enlisted 3 of the game's most devoted and respected disciples, Curt Smith, Milo Hamilton, and Wally Moon. Each of them will reflect on the game for a few minutes before we open it up to you, the stars of our show, for your meanest, nastiest, dirtiest questions or comments. So start getting them ready. A Frenchman named Jacques Bersoun said that to understand America, one must first understand baseball. And the game is about so much more than the big leagues, which will be attained by so very few people. It begins on the sandlots and the schools and progresses for some to the minor leagues, which become the waiting room for the majors. As the film you watched just showed, the minors are not only a place for great and affordable family fun, but also the stage for some wonderful talent. And holding it all together is the dream of making it to the bigs, where the grass is always green, the stadiums are always full, where you have your own hotel room with no roommate, and where finally you leave the bus and you fly to games. So for my part today in today's program, I want to talk to you a little bit about my 28-year history in the minor leagues. I'm kind of a busher, I guess. The strange journey begins with children playing baseball on what was till very recently an unmowed field covered in snow. The bees, that terrible stinging you'd get in your hands when you'd hit a hard ball on that very cold day. That malady that we, especially in Buffalo, New York, and the cold weather climes got to know so well. That was only one of the penalties we had to deal with for rushing the season. How about that baseball you got for Christmas and you couldn't wait to use it, which you took out in April, and it quickly became a mud-encrusted shot put that tried to absorb all the March and April moisture that it possibly could on uncut playing fields. Now, all of us in baseball idolized and tried to imitate our favorite major league hero. Mine was Pee Wee Reese, slick fielding shortstop for the Brooklyn Dodgers. I would have been him too, until my freshman year, that is, until I faced my first curveball pitcher. After I went 0 for 4, I decided that perhaps my spring afternoons might be better spent on a tennis court. You see, Little League coaches had not yet discovered communities like Buffalo, let alone become international, spectacular televised events from Williamsport, Pennsylvania. It is strange then that I, Baseline Bob, as an adult, not to mention our entire community, would get caught up in the Major League dream many years later. Baseball is a game for all ages. An old-timer once told me that the calendar year begins on opening day, yet it is also the game of our youths, where we remember our happiest memories, always of the summer. As a child, I could barely wait for opening day. We would go to watch our AAA Buffalo Bisons play in an old nostalgic ballpark called Offerman Stadium. It was a sacred day for me that I would spend alone with my father. Then, in a heartbeat, I was a 42-year-old dad myself, with 4 children of my own, and on our way to watch the opener of the Bisons, but now the team that I owned. The old stadium was gone then, replaced by an even older one, but the memories are the same even now. My dream began on a Friday night in the fall, maybe a Friday night just about like today, with a call from our mayor. Offerman Stadium had long since been torn down to make way for an inner-city school, and the team had moved to an even older, for football-only stadium, which was supposedly named War Memorial Stadium, but we all called the Rock Pile. Attendance collapsed, and the team went on a mid-season road trip on a bus, and they never returned. Moving to Canada, they became the Winnipeg Whips. 9 years later, they were replaced by a AA team playing in the Eastern League and teetering on the brink of bankruptcy. The mayor made me a deal. He said if I would buy the team, he would build us a new stadium. So, maybe trying to recover those dreams of my youth, I said, sure, why not? Well, I went to inspect the stadium the next day, and not even 2 feet of beautiful new fallen snow could hide the fact that that stadium was really a dump. When the weather changed, we gave the old girl, which is what the baseball scouts always call an aging ballpark, a new coat of paint, in fact, many different colors of paint, and started an aggressive marketing campaign. You see, long ago, baseball owners merely hung up a sign that said, "Game this afternoon," and that was not enough. Our promotional efforts in the community were met with overwhelming disinterest. Opening day was coming. We needed a plan. Heck, we needed a miracle. And we got one. A surprise call from Hollywood told us that some little-known actor was looking for an old stadium to shoot a movie in. And so Robert Redford brought his mythical team, the New York Knights, to our ballpark in Buffalo for the filming of one of the all-time great sports movies, The Natural. It meant we had to repaint our colorful interiors that we'd worked so hard to paint all of these colors of the rainbow. We had to paint them all gray again, and we had to replace all of our wall signs and build tunnels and sets. But it was all worth it, because Buffalonians, as we are all known, Buffalonians came out in huge numbers to the place and to see the place again and maybe rekindle their old dreams of the past as well. Now, ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't seen the last scene from The Natural, where Roy Hobbs comes up to bat for the last time in the big game, I'd like you now to close your eyes. And by the way, the young boy that makes the big catch in the end of the game is my son, Bobby. Roll him, please. baseball. So Hollywood came and Hollywood went, but we were launched. We moved back to AAA, built a fan base, and our mayor, good to his word, built a beautiful new 21,000-seat stadium in downtown Buffalo, a special, perfect green place in a world of concrete, a getaway place, our own field of dreams. Now the old scouts would come to our ballpark the first year and put on a necktie, which I'd never seen scouts in neckties. And I'd say, "What are you doing?" And they say, "That's the way we dress to meet a new lady." And who, might I ask, do you think our first guest was at our beautiful new stadium? The day before our first game, then Vice President George H.W. Bush, shown visiting the park here with our Congressman Jack Kemp, came to pay respects to the new lady. Now, paying close attention to the needs of our guests in the stands, we went on to draw over 1 million people 6 straight years and to win several pennants and championships. Most importantly, though, I believe, is that we raised a whole new generation of baseball fans, launching them on their old dream trips to the bigs. On the field, we've watched several great young players advance to the bigs. In fact, in one game just this last summer, 7 ex-Bisons started for our parent team, the New York Mets. Based on our success, we even got in the hunt for a Major League expansion team. An unsuccessful 9-year effort, though, did prove to us how lucky we were to be in the minors, where we can continue to offer quality, affordable family entertainment to our friends and guests. Our love of the game led us to add two more minor league teams as well. A single-A team, the Jamestown Jammers in the New York Penn League, and the Double-A Northwest Arkansas Naturals in the Texas League. Our front office works hard to come up with new ideas to keep our ballpark experience fresh, and we are proud that many minor league clubs as well as major league clubs come to see us for new ideas. I guess in the words of that famous shortstop from Saturday Night Live, Chico Escuela, baseball has been very, very good to me. I met my beautiful wife of 26 years, the love of my life, Mindy, at a game at our stadium. And I've been blessed to be part of this game, and I'm blessed to be here with you tonight. And so, in the words of the immortal Rogers Hornsby, people ask me what I do in the winter when there's no baseball. I'll tell you what I do. I stare out the window and wait for spring. Thank you all very much. Now I'd like to call our starting team to the playing field up here. So if our starting team would come up, and I'll introduce you to them as they make their way up. Curt Smith, our leadoff hitter, will be followed by Milo Hamilton, and then Wally Moon. What do you say when the Aggies run on the field? Do you have is there something when the team comes out, is there a special cheer that you have? Oh, thank you. Just a lot of noise? Okay, fair enough. Well, we're fortunate to have these gentlemen with us, and let me formally introduce you to our leadoff hitter, Curt Smith. Curt and I are practically neighbors in upstate New York. He's an author, columnist, radio talk show host, and senior lecturer in English at the University of Rochester. He was a Reagan administration speechwriter and wrote many notable speeches for President Bush, including the just war between for the Persian Gulf Address, the Nixon and Reagan Library dedications, and President Bush's 2004 eulogy to Ronald Reagan at the Washington National Cathedral. But what I and my baseball friends know Curt Smith best for is being an accomplished author of 14 books, many of which chronicle the history of baseball. Such titles as Voices of the Game, What Baseball Means to Me, Storied Stadiums, and most recently, A Talk in the Park, 9 decades of baseball tales from the broadcast booth. Ladies and gentlemen, Curt Smith.
Well, thank you, Bob, and it's a delight and privilege to be on the same stage with Mr. Rich, who I'll have a couple things to say about in just a moment, and of course Wally Moon, about whom it was said when the Dodgers moved to the West Coast in 1958 and he hit homers over the screen to the opposite field of the Los Angeles Coliseum. What did they call them? They called them moonshots, and moonshots they were. And of course Milo Hamilton, literally a member of more halls of fame than I could possibly remember, but the most illustrious, to be sure, is the Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown, New York. That's right. Class of 1992, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a very, very good year. It is a delight to be here. I feel like Texas is my second home, my adopted home. My wife is from Houston, and we have relatives scattered throughout the state, and you name a college, and we've got people who went there, including, don't tell anyone though, the University of Texas, but we don't brag about that. Okay, at least not here. But I'm just going to speak for a couple minutes. Incidentally, how wonderful it was to see that terrific excerpt from Bart Giamatti, the late great commissioner of baseball, and like Andy Card, my former boss in the Bush White House, and me, a devoted fan of the Boston Red Sox. And in fact, every year at the end of the Red Sox final game, Joe Castiglione, their radio voice, reads the entirety of how baseball is designed to break your heart, and of course this year it did break our heart. Not every team can go 7-20 in September. Not every team would want to, but you know, I was very, very pleased to see that. Pee Wee Reese, incidentally, was a great Hall of Fame shortstop, but many of us remember him from the 1960s when he was the inimitable partner to the Falstaffian J. Hanna Dizzy Dean, the play-by-play voice of the CBS television game of the week. And two things that I've written the majority of my books about in terms of baseball. One is stadiums, or ballparks as we call them in baseball, and of course the other is broadcasters. And broadcasting to me has always been very analogous in a sense to writing for a president, because the aim is to make the inanimate animate, to make it personal, to make it anecdotal, and to try to be a connecting tissue, if you would, between the public and the game, or the public and the White House. And so in that sense, it was, I thought, a natural evolution. I grew up listening to Milo Hamilton. He was then the voice of the Chicago White Sox, so it was easier to pick up than if he was at that point in Houston. Dizzy Dean, of course, as I mentioned, a great role model for anyone who truly wants to understand the eloquence of the English language. Diz fractured English like no one has, or I can guarantee you ever will. A runner's slud, a batter's swang. Fielders are now returning to their respectable positions. And of course, my own favorite, that hitter Diz said he's standing confidentially at the plate. So holy Toledo Milo, to use your term, that really, I think, began my love affair with broadcasting. I also grew up listening to another fellow Southerner, Mel Allen, the great voice of the New York Yankees, who was a sponsor's dream. Whenever a Yankee hit a home run, he would call it a Ballantine Blast or a White Owl Wallop, in honor of Ballantine beer or White Owl cigars. And of course, he made "How About That" part of our national lexicon. So that's one of the things that I've written about. Bob won't tell you this, but I'm going to tell you, just talk for several moments about his role in the whole evolution of ballparks. A few years ago, I did a book called Storied Stadiums, where quite literally I wrote about every major league ballpark that has ever graced the game. And in this book, despite it being about major league ballparks, I talked about minor league ballparks as well. And rightly, Camden Yards, which opened in Baltimore in 1992, gets a great deal of credit for being the prototype and the model of what you and I would call the last 2 decades of the new old ballparks, the ballpark in Arlington being one, your ballpark, Minute Maid Field in Houston being another, idiosyncratic and eccentric, where the ballpark is so personal, it becomes really a participant, not a spectator. Who did it begin with? Or with whom did it begin, to use proper English? After all, old is, began over here. Bob Rich, along with the mayor, Jimmy Griffith, a great aficionado of the game, they were the two, in essence, particularly Bob, that designed what we still in upstate New York call Pilot Field. And Camden Yards in Baltimore was designed at least in part on Pilot Field. It was also designed at least in part on Fenway Park in Boston, because Edward Bennett Williams, the owner of the Baltimore Orioles, really his secret love was to own the Boston Red Sox. He couldn't buy them then, so he did the next best thing. He built and choreographed a field that was as close to Fenway Park as you can. Without Bob Rich, perhaps none of that happens, and what a loss that would have been to the game. What do they have in common, ballparks and also broadcasters? I think they appeal to people in a very personal and individual sort of way. They don't appeal to people based on statistics and numbers and inside baseball. Dizzy Dean used to call them statics, and he was right. Statistics are static. They may appeal to a very small slice, I think, of the American public, but to really grasp the game and to embrace the game and to lure people into following the game, as Milo does so well and has done really since the mid-1980s here in Texas, you need to make the game personal, as Bart Giamatti understood, and Pee Wee Reese understood, and Bob Rich does as well. So with that, I will thank you for the great privilege of again being down here in Texas. Good luck tomorrow, and good luck with your move to a new conference. It's going to be fascinating for you and for those of us who love college football nationally like me. And above all, thanks for the privilege of being here tonight.
Nice going, pal.
Thank you.
Thank you, Curt, and you'll all get a chance to chat with Curt when you bring out those questions. Curt, by the way, I'm a great fan of yours and your writing, and I appreciate your comment about Buffalo, and you might not know, but with the rising salaries in baseball, I had a new book planned myself, and it was going to be called How to Make a Small Fortune in Baseball. You start with the large fortune.
Yes.
Very true.
Wally Moon is an American classic. He's a guy who has never been afraid of setting the bar too high. As a minor league player in the 1950s, he used his spare time between games to earn a master's degree in administration education from where else? Texas A&M? In 1954, he ignored orders by the St. Louis Cardinals to report to minor league camp. Instead, he showed up for major league camp and forced the card and said, if I don't make this team, I'm retiring from baseball. Rookie says that. And in left field was Enos Country Slaughter. Well, you know what happened. He beat out Enos Country Slaughter. Enos Country Slaughter was traded to some team in New York that wears pinstripes, and his career was launched with the St. Louis Cardinals. He then moved after several years. He went to the Los Angeles Dodgers and went to a team that finished in 7th place the year before. And when Wally Moon started the Moonshots, they won the World Championship his first year there. His 12-year Major League playing career included Rookie of the Year honors in 1952, All-Star appearances in 1957 and 59, a Gold Glove Award in 1960, and along with all of his accomplishments on the field, he has served as an athletic director, a minor league manager, a team owner, and even a sheriff on the hit TV show Wagon Train. Ladies and gentlemen, Wally Moon.
I'll repeat, howdy, Eggs. It's good to be here. It's good to be here and to say hello to you, baseball fans, and to try to relate to you the experiences of a young man learning to play the game of baseball and enjoying it so much. I grew up in northeast Arkansas, 500 miles from College Station, Texas, and was recruited to A&M as both a basketball player and a baseball player. And so I have seen this university grow from 6,000 students to now 55,000 students. To see Olson Field being remodeled into the new Bluebell ballpark, and it's so great to see that progress. But this has happened all across the United States, and one of the great pleasures that I personally had as a baseball player was to be able to travel the United States and to see the fans who support this great game of baseball, to know them, to hear them, and to have them not only cheer for you, but sometimes boo you as a baseball player. If you watched any of last night's game, you saw a classic World Series, a fall game, and with everything on the line, I saw an enraptured crowd there of supporters. They had crossed fingers. They were praying for a base hit, or they were praying for somebody to make an out and to win that ball game. And it went on and on. And my wife said to me last night, she said, baseball captures the audience. There's so much tension there, and there's such great performances, and no wonder people love the game of baseball so much. And so I enjoyed 12 years of Major League Baseball play with the St. Louis Cardinals. I'm rooting hard for them. I'm also rooting for the Texas Rangers, and I love to see a ball game like last night. And they're going right down to the last out. But that's what championships are made of, and that's why they call it the World Series. The other thing that was inspiring to me was to see the new stadiums coming out of the ground, like Curt was talking about. To see the Astrodome come out of the ground in Houston, to see Dodger Stadium built out in Chavez Ravine, and to be able to play and perform and to hear the applause of baseball fans is a marvelous thing for a young baseball player. I cherish those years, I cherish those memories, and I cherish the fact that I'm a Texas Aggie. I love being here. I married a girl from Bryan, Texas. Even though I'm an Arkansan, she's made a Texan out of me, so I can root for the Rangers as well. But I want you to know that it's people like Mr. Bob Rich and Curt and my friend Milo Hamilton. Milo and I were rookies together 57 years ago with the St. Louis Cardinals. He's a broadcaster. I was a young player. So I've known this man that many years. I've listened to him, I've watched him, and I've loved his career. And I told him I really came tonight to honor him for all that contribution to the great game of baseball. There's another great announcer by the name of Vince Scully, who I knew 7 years in Los Angeles. And Vince is in his 62nd year broadcasting. And he signed on for next year, the 63rd year. I saw him about 3 weeks ago, and I said, Vinny, you're going good, keep it up. And he said, I'm going to go as long as I can go. And I think that is, we have an expression in baseball that they're lifers. You know, they stay with it, they contribute to it all their life. And so I'm honored to be here tonight, and I'm honored to just say hello to you baseball fans. And if this many people show up on the night of the World Series, you know there's a great interest in it, and we'll all enjoy tonight's game very much. So thank you. God bless you.
You know, this is a great institution of higher learning, and there might be even a statistician or someone who teaches statistics here, but I'm just wondering what the odds were on opening day of 2011 that we'd be having Game 7 between Wally's beloved Cards and the Texas Rangers, and through the rain delay that we'd be on the very same night. So if somebody has an answer for that, we have some great prizes out.
I'm beating the Missouri tomorrow.
And yeah, what is this, Texas-Missouri weekend special or what? This is a hero of many of ours who have somewhat grown up in the game. Milo Hamilton is a sportscaster best known for calling play-by-play for 7 different Major League Baseball teams since 1953. He's one of 6 living members of the broadcasters wing of the Baseball Hall of Fame. In 1992, he received the Ford Frick Award from the Baseball Hall of Fame, and in 2000, he was inducted into the National Radio Hall of Fame and is also a member of the Texas Radio Hall of Fame. He has a signature call that many of you, if you didn't hear it live, you probably heard it sometime during your life. And Milo, with your permission, I'm going to try to do this call right now.
Be my guest.
Okay. There's a drive to left field. That ball is going to be out of here. It's gone. It's number 715. There's a new home run champion of all time. It's Henry Aaron. How was that, Milo?
Don't lose your day job.
Thank you. That call, is, in spite of my rendition, has stood the test of time, and so has Milo Hamilton, who has made the journey to Cooperstown and back, and remains one of baseball's most familiar, popular, and beloved broadcasters. Ladies and gentlemen, Milo Hamilton.
Boy, they said I was going to be the cleanup hitter. Can you imagine being a cleanup hitter to this group? And especially with Wally, and I've got great stories about him, and I'm going to tell you some too. And I learned things about him. You know, the last day of the season this year, Wally was my guest in the booth at Minute Maid Park to talk about his new book called Moonshots. How else could you have a title that he wrote with a friend? Moonshots describes him perfectly, because it just gave him more years in the big leagues. But Wally and I'd been in the big leagues in 1953. If you can call it that, I was with the St. Louis Browns, because the next year they became the Baltimore Orioles. In fact, I felt like I was kind of doing the Browns games again this year with the Astros. But, you know, I started broadcasting baseball in 1950 in the old 3I League. And minor leagues, I still love it when we go with the big league teams to play exhibition games. I love the minor league parks. I think the big leagues have lost something when they don't have as much fun at their parks as they do at the minor league parks. And Bob, I talked to you before about Terry Collins, who was your manager and is now manager of the Mets. He used to rave about you when he was our manager. He said Buffalo was a great baseball town. It should be a big league town. And you felt that way about him too, didn't you?
Absolutely.
And he's calmed down a little. I kidded him in spring training when I interviewed Terry Collins in Florida. And I said, you know, I've heard you've calmed down a little bit. He was so intense. And he wanted to be so successful as a big league manager because the Astros gave him his first chance. And he just couldn't take the pressure. But I think you saw a different Terry Collins this year with the Mets, and he did a nice job for them. But those ballparks that you talked about and the natural, you know, you could have put the last hit last night in the World Series in that film, and it would have fit.
Yeah.
The home run that won it for the Cardinals in the 11th inning. But Wally Moon, he talked about the Slaughter situation. I had joined the Cardinals right out of spring training. They wanted another announcer to travel, and I was going to travel the first half of the year, and Jack Buck was going to stay home. And then at the All-Star game, we switched, and Jack went on the road, and I stayed at home and did the intros to the TV games and the closings and so forth and the interviews. But you talk about putting in a situation, and I think back on it, and I've talked to Wally about it over the years. I think what he learned right here in this city at this school put him in good stead to be able to handle this situation. Enos Slaughter was one of the most popular players in the history of St. Louis. He was the first Charlie Hustle. I know Pete Rose is called Charlie Hustle, but Enos Slaughter, when you score from first on a base hit to win a World Series game in '46 as he did, that's hustle.
You had to mention that, didn't you?
Well, if it's part of history, Curt, that's what you write about, so that's what I have to talk about.
I didn't say you shouldn't. I said you didn't have to.
But that was what he was known for. I mean, that's the way he played. And the day before opening day, Moon had made the club. They had to play him because he had a great minor league career. So they traded Slaughter to the Yankees, and the emotion, he just bawled like a baby at that press conference, and who could blame him? He'd been a teammate of Musial and Terry Moore and all those guys, so he was going to another club. Now the next day is the parade. I don't think they do it anymore. We don't do it in Houston. They have a parade to welcome the ball club home from spring training. And he's riding in the parade on the back of a convertible, and they booed him unmercifully. And he hadn't been to bat yet. Well, the boos got silenced. That's boos as in booing a player, not booze that you pour. What happened in his first at bat as a Cardinal? Home run. They never booed him again. He won him over with one swing, and there's a picture of him coming to home plate in his new book called Moonshots, and Red Schoendienst, the great Hall of Fame second baseman, was standing there to shake his hand. And your picture of Pee Wee Reese brings back a great memory, too. Not only the captain of the Dodgers, and that's what he was, but when the Dodgers brought Jackie Robinson, you know, some of the players were not going to play. And the commissioner said, and I think that's why Happy Chandler's in Cooperstown, he said anybody that doesn't play is going to be thrown out of baseball. But the thing I think that really convinced all the players, because Pee Wee was from Louisville, and when he went up to Jackie Robinson and put his arm around him in that dugout in front of all those other ball players, it said more than any words could say. And from then on, Jackie was accepted. If Pee Wee hadn't done that, it would not have been as smooth a transition. But Wally, when I think about, you know, I didn't know, I interviewed you about, you were quite a basketball player here as an Aggie.
Pretty good.
You know, it shows him making a great shot in Madison Square Garden in the book.
Pretty good.
I'm really, I have no pride. I plug these guys' books on the air all the time. Curt knows that too. But Curt's book, the new one, A Talk in the Park, and he was very good to me. He's got a lot of my stories in there. But the main thing about it is, if you enjoy baseball on the radio, and folks, baseball is a radio game. I know because the mail I get, and from the people who have lost their sight one way or another, and I've credited those people over the years too. I used to get a lot of communication from them. They'd say, we want to know if the guy bats left-handed, right-handed. Same with a pitcher. If a pop-up goes into the stands, we want to hear that too, because you're our eyes. And I said, you know, if they think it's that important, I bet you the other fans do too. And you mentioned it, we paint pictures. That's what we do. And several years ago, in the mid-'90s, my great friend Jack Buck and Bob Murphy, who was the voice of the Mets, almost in the same week, I mean, that's an exaggeration, but almost at the same time, because we were crossing booths. And we decided we didn't want to do TV anymore. And my reason was, and it was part of their reason too, the TV announcer doesn't do the game, the truck does. And if I'm telling a story about how somebody on the field reminds me of Stan Musial or Wally Moon, any player that I can fit into the broadcast, in my ear, and the truck says, "You got to read what's on the screen." I told several of those directors where they could put that, but after all the times I told them, there wasn't any room anymore. But because when you change booths, I'd be on the radio and I'd go to the TV booth, and the analyst in the TV, I'd bring up a subject. He'd say, "Yeah, we talked about that when you were over on radio." Then I'd go back to radio for the last 3 innings, and I'd bring up something to maybe Larry Durker, who was in the booth with me. And Larry'd say, "Yeah, Captain, we talked about that while you were gone." I said, "Wait a minute. I want this broadcast to be what I'm talking about, and I don't want somebody telling me we talked about it earlier." So Buck and Murphy and I almost simultaneously, because that's what we do. The memories. This game, what a history. And the book you wrote about the ballparks and everything that you remember about this game. And one of the stories that I tell in the book of his new Talk in the Park, it's here. You're going to see it later. One of the stories that I like to tell about the importance of this game, and it kind of goes in with what you read from Bart Giamatti. You know, in the Civil War, in the prison camps, the Southern prisoners were seeing the Northern soldiers play baseball. Well, they'd never seen a baseball game because it was an Eastern Seaboard game. In fact, and a lot of the guys that were playing baseball in those amateur days were sailors. Thus, there's a man on deck and there's a man down in the hold. Some people think he's in the hold. He's down in the hold. Or the next hitter's on deck. The phrases from those Navy guys that were playing back around the Civil War, that's where that came from. So the Southern guys after the war went back to all the mill towns in the South, and all those mill towns then sponsored baseball teams. And you know why a lot of those guys, and Wally knows, a lot of those guys had chances to go to the big leagues, but they were making more working in the mill than they could make in a minor league ball club.
Sure.
But the reason I bring that up is because that kind of brought things together for baseball and the nation. And in World War I, Woodrow Wilson was asked, "Do you want us to keep playing?" He said, "You've got to, because baseball means so much to all of our people." World War II, same question for FDR. Then Commissioner Judge Landis says, "Should we play?" FDR says, "Yes, play on." And after 9/11, remember those great ceremonies when we opened up the ballparks again a few days later? Baseball is interwoven into this whole fabric here. So if you think I love this game, you can bet on it in Vegas and you'll win. But this is the greatest game. You know, I did football for 25 years. I did basketball for 42 years. But baseball is the greatest game. We play every day. And how can a team, and now here's the charm of it, and it's going to come to fruition tonight. On the 25th of August, the St. Louis Cardinals were 10.5 out, not just of winning the pennant or a division, they were 10.5 out of the wild card.
True.
And tonight they're going to play for the World Championship in baseball. If you don't think this isn't the game, there's a great illustration of Tony La Russa. He's managed a lot of great teams. I think he might have done his great. He would not let that team quit. And we know it better than anybody because he clinched it the last night of the season, the night you were on the air with me, as the Braves lost and they beat us. And that's how they got into the playoffs. And here they are tonight. And all that uniform with that gold bat and those two cardinals sitting, one on each end of the bat. What tradition and what memories. And now, you said Vince Scully's signed on for another year?
Yeah. You going to sign on?
I don't know. We don't have an owner.
Don't look at me, Milo. I'm happy where I am.
Well, I was supposed to retire after 2010, and Drayton said to me as the season was coming, he said, "What are you going to do?" I said, "I'll probably be out at the ballpark watching your ball club play." He says, "Why don't you stay till 2012 and get paid?" I guess that was a pretty good, easy answer for me. Yeah. And so I wanted to stay through 2012, and I hope the new owner thinks so too. But I keep kidding Vinny. You know, I started in 1950, but it was in the minor leagues for 3 years. Vinny never had to do a minor league game because Red Barber took him under his wing. Turned out to be a pretty good choice, right? Yeah. And you wrote his book, the Vince Scully book. I told you
You're marvelous.
Shameless.
Marvelous. You know.
But anyway.
And his commission price is so low.
But let me just tell you, I've kidded Vinny because he was going to quit 2 years ago. Then in September he says, "I'm staying another year." I said, "Vinny, I'm not going to catch you." I went by everybody in the last 2 years. And you know, 1921 was the first baseball broadcast. Can you think of the hundreds of guys that have done baseball games since 1921? Being second all time ain't too bad. And Scully, I can never catch him because I had 3 years in the minor leagues. And I hope he stays forever. And I'd like to stay and I have a deal with my son. If I ever start making bad mistakes or doing this or that, you're going to have a coat hanger right on my neck, and I'm going to get jerked right out of that booth. Because I want people to remember me when I sounded pretty good, not sounding like I ought to get out of the booth. So if I can stay one more year, that'd be kind of nice. 63 years in baseball for a guy that wanted to do it since he was in the Navy in 1945. That's how I broke in. That wouldn't be, I said, boy, if I could just be a big league announcer and do it for 25 years. Crazy, isn't it? Baseball, a game of dreams, and I've had mine, and I love it. And these are great examples, and you fans are the great examples. And Wally mentioned about that crowd last night. Yeah. You talk about fans. They couldn't give it up.
And in fact, some may not know that until, because some of you weren't born then, but in the late 1950s when the Dodgers and Giants went to Los Angeles and San Francisco respectively, until then, St. Louis had been the major league's westernmost and southernmost teams. So it became truly, I know this will hurt you that I'm disparaging the Atlanta Braves, but the St. Louis Cardinals have always been the real America's team, and I think you see that not simply last night, but I found that out, and I know you would agree with that. The first book I ever did was a biography of Dizzy Dean. And I went down, you know, he claimed to have been born in about half a dozen different cities. So I went down some all, and out, you know, went to Arkansas, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee. And what do they have in common? They all return to the St. Louis Cardinals. And they have a vast, vast populace and following, and truly have forever, as you knew. Incidentally, it would be remiss of me, you would mention that you were batting cleanup. Former President Bush, 41, was good field, no hit. He was a marvelous fielder, but like some of us when we were younger, had a difficult time, in my case, not simply hitting the curveball, hitting a baseball. But
you know he's watching this tonight.
Is he? Well, God bless him. They don't come any better in any field. Can we give him a round of applause? But I will finish this because he has told the story many times. Good field, no hit, yes, but then he said, you know, I batted 8th at Yale, but really I batted 2nd cleanup. And that was President Bush.
2nd cleanup.
Milo, shall we throw this open to the folks and see what's on their minds?
Throw out the opening pitch, Robert.
All right, who's got the first one? Now, let me, we want to get in as many as we can and be reminded that we're going to have a reception afterwards where big deals are going to be offered on books from all the authors. Yes, sir.
Yes, my last name is Parnell. I lost my dad this last year, and we grew up in New Mexico, and he used to call Mel Parnell Cousin Mel, and I'm a big Red Sox fan, and I want you to know I'm here under false pretenses because my wife says Curt Schilling is going to be here. Anyway, I know all of you probably knew Mel Parnell back in the late 40s and early 50s. I would love to see you talk a little bit about Mel Parnell.
Well, not simply Curt Schilling, or in my case Smith, but Curt Gowdy, of course, the longtime Red Sox announcer. So the Red Sox have often been Curt, quite literally in this case. Mel Parnell has the highest winning percentage of any left-hander in Red Sox history. Why do I mention that? Because Fenway Park is habitually a graveyard for left-handed pitchers because opposing lineups stock and stack their lineups with right-handed hitters trying to hit the wall at Fenway Park. But he has a winning percentage at Fenway over 700, which is astonishing. He later became a Red Sox broadcaster in the 1960s with a great following of his own. And so, you know, when you talk about Mel at Fenway Park, it's not Mel Allen, it's Mel Parnell.
And Mr. President, as you watch, maybe tonight with all we've talked about, the great memories, you could maybe look to Barbara and say, you know, she was scoring the games when he played at Yale. And he scored a hit. She scored a hit and error. So it should have been a hit. And she says, it's an error, George. Maybe tonight she would change it.
I seriously doubt that. Yes, sir. A question over here. Great on Mel Parnell. That's tremendous.
I had a question about the new wild card system that's being talked about. What do y'all think about having more teams in the playoffs and what that does, you know, it used to just be you win the pennant, you're in the World Series. What do y'all think about having more teams going to the playoffs? And also, for Milo, your favorite Astros player and why?
You want to take parts 1 and 2, Milo?
Well, in regard to the playoff system, follow the money. That's what it's all about, adding teams and more games. My favorite player, because he played as an Astro, played his whole career as an Astro. Cott played center, played left, played second base. I think he's a first ballot Hall of Famer. He got his 3,000th hit playing for the same club. I liked Bagwell a lot, and there were other players that I liked a lot. But for all the things that he did and what he means in our community and what he has done with the Sunshine Kids, most of them terminally ill with cancer, and what he and Patty have devoted their lives to that and have raised about 15 or 20 million for that charity. And more recently, because of it's happened in their family, and this is the last few days of Pink Month, they've raised a lot of money for the breast cancer drive as well. You put all those things, and Craig Biggio is my favorite Astro player.
As good as he might have been, you really felt you owned him, and he knew you did too?
Well, I had my most success, I guess, against Robin Roberts, who was a great right-handed pitcher. And I don't have a total answer for that. Some you see good, some you don't see so good. So. But I did want to answer or speak about a player and the playoff systems that we have now. I loved it when the National League champion played the American League champion after a 154 game schedule. And I thought that was really good. And I saw the development of the playoff system and the wild card, and I saw it grow, and I saw the fans accept it. And I think it keeps a little more interest going throughout the year, and especially since we've extended to a 162 game schedule. So there are more cities involved, there's more interest right down to the last wire. I still just, I still think there ought to be just the two teams, but we have to make progress as we grow and as we get more popular.
So You're a purist, Wally. Yes,
well,
sir.
wait a minute, though.
Yeah, Curt.
Because purists can have a pejorative content, and I don't think it should in this case. If you're most proud of the fact that the regular season is a marathon, and the regular season matters more than any other sport's regular season, which baseball invariably brags about, why then would you dilute the special aspect of your regular season by adding 2 more teams to the playoffs? That, it seems to me, enriches October at the expense of the rest of the season. I don't think it makes any sense, but I think it will happen.
You know, you're so good. You're so good with words. Couldn't you hit a curveball either?
I could not hit a curveball. A curveball is impervious to language. May I ask, did Warren Spahn ever pick you off first base?
Twice.
Twice. Did he have the best motion that
first
you've
year
ever
I
seen?
did, yeah. And I had all this coaching, you know, from the Cardinal staff. And you got to watch him. You got to watch him. He'll pick you up. Get ready.
You young guys have pretty good memory for
First
this
time
game.
I saw him, he picked me up.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
I remember being in Chicago and being a Cub fan when Harry Carey was there. And he had a unique way of broadcasting or celebrating the 7th inning stretch. Do broadcasters have their own unique way of doing that throughout the years? And if they do, what are some of the ones that are the most unique to you?
That's the only one.
Is that right?
Yeah, nobody else does that.
Okay, I didn't know.
That's why he's hairy, you know.
Yeah.
He's a good
Thank
one.
you.
Thank you.
Good. Yes, sir.
This question for Mr. Smith. In your astonishing history, sir, how did you come to work for former President Bush and his administration, sir?
I got lucky. No, I had been editor of the Saturday Evening Post magazine, which is one, sadly, of the very few Republican or conservative magazines in the country. And through that, I guess had come to the notice of the Reagan administration. I worked for them, for President Reagan, for several senior cabinet members, and then was extraordinarily fortunate in late 1988 to be asked to serve then Vice President, soon to be President Bush. And you know, as I tell people, the greatest, and I think most White House speechwriters would say this, I certainly say it because of the person involved. The privilege of writing for Bush 41, as we now know him, is without equal in my life, and I think Andy would say the same about serving. And it's not simply because he was one of the great foreign policy presidents that we've ever had, which he was, and an adult, which is always nice to have as President of the United States, but also because of the sterling quality of him as a human being. Just one very brief anecdote. 2001, my wife and I adopted 2 little children, young, 8 months and 18 months, from Ukraine. In large part, we could do that because of the crumbling of communism, which George Herbert Walker Bush presided over. But without us telling him, he somehow found out that we were adopting 2 children, very young. When we arrived back in upstate New York after having been to Ukraine, we found 2 letters in our mailbox. And who were they from? The 41st President of the United States. Each individually tell them that he had been a friend of mine, he wanted to be their friend, and talking about the marvelous virtue of America, American exceptionalism, and how fortunate they were to be living in a world of peace. That's Bush 41.
Right. Any other questions? Yes, sir. Make it mean, dirty question.
Well, I don't want it to be all about the money again, but I do. It's mean and dirty. Well, I'm curious about, again, the Astros going to the American League, and besides money, what do y'all think about them running away?
I think nothing about it, because here's the point. As I understand it, if in fact you had 2 leagues, both of 15 teams, there would be interleague play virtually every week, which means that you would not have this special cluster of time devoted each year, twice, 2 extended periods to interleague play. So if the idea behind interleague play is to create a buzz, making it a special time of year, why would you have virtually an interleague game every night? It doesn't make any sense, which is probably why it'll happen.
Yeah, a question. Come on to the microphone so we can.
That's a very good point.
Milo agrees. But who said life is fair?
And
Yep.
also, can I get some feedback on the designated hitter and how? I feel like y'all might not like that.
Shall we start with the national?
As a,
Yes,
as
the
a national leaguer, I detest the designated hitter. But, you know,
If you go to an NBA game, do some of the games shoot 2 points or only one shot for a foul and the other shoots 2? Or the other part of it, they shoot 3-point field goals and the other guys just get 2 points? Or in the football league, do they only allow 1 point for an extra point? Would you want them in another part of that league to get 2 points for an extra point?
Okay, Hall of Famer. Okay, Hall of Famer, you're the king. You make the rule. Designated hitter or no designated hitter?
No designated.
You want to say weigh in on this, Curt?
Yeah. I mean, you know, we are not the people that count here. The people that count, by and large, are kids 8, 10, 12. They're not mesmerized by the strategy of seeing a hitter strike out, or pitcher strike out on 3 pitches every time he bats. They want offense. They want action. I confess to being an American League fan, but above all, I like what works, and the designated hitter works. 1973, it was instituted not because of some magnificent concept from the netherworld, but because offense in the American League had virtually disappeared. So they added the DH. The DH has been enormously successful. I agree with both of you, it should be uniform. But I think the last time I checked, the National League may be the only league that doesn't have the designated hitter. So get with it, get the act together, adopt the DH, and then we'll have uniformity in baseball.
All right, you guys, I hate to do this, but I've got to. We've got to call an end to this. But if I were Boomer on NFL football day, you guys may not like this, but you got to do it. We got 7. We didn't think we'd have baseball still going, and we thought we'd be in that cold winter, but we got Game 7. Don't tell me who you, and don't you tell this audience who you're cheering for, but I want it. You guys are all good with the past. Let's hear you on the future. Who's going to win this? Who's going to win this World Series in 2011, Curt?
Well, it won't be the Boston Red Sox. I think. Say that with some safety. I want the St. Louis Cardinals. For some reason, I think the Texas Rangers.
I want the Cardinals to win because I was there with them, with Wally Moon, and I broadcast games when Tony La Russa was a kid shortstop, second baseman, and we kept a good relationship over the years. And standing around the batting cage the last series of the year, one of their owners, Mr. DeWitt, was there, and he introduced me to him. He said, "You probably knew my family since you've been in the game this long." And then Tony said, "Milo was the first guy as tabbed me as a suspect, not a prospect." But boy, what a manager. And he's going to be the #2 manager if he wins 25 more games. And he'll do that next year by Memorial Day. So I want Tony to win.
I certainly am pulling for the St. Louis Cardinals, but I know this, whoever scores the most runs is going to win.
Let me write that down.
I also know that, you know, you learn a great deal from winning. You also learn a great deal from losing. And there's always got to be a winner and a loser in a baseball game. I've been on 3 world championship ball clubs, and it's a wonderful, wonderful experience. And I saw the guys on the other side who were losing, and it's tough on them. Ernie Banks played 20 years in the National League, never was on a championship ball club. But it's a special time, and tonight will be a very special game, and the World Series champions will be that.
So we've got 1 Rangers and 2 Cards, and I too am going to be selling books in the lobby tonight. So we'll leave it at a tie, and I'm picking the Rangers as well.
Oh, okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, and for all the thousands of people who have taken the time to tune in at home on the website here, I want to thank you on behalf of this panel. It's just great that you all came out tonight. I hope you have a great evening and that your team wins. And please, one more time, let's hear it for Curt Smith, Milo Hamilton, and Wally Moon.